Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. And I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me. As always, the NFL Draft concluded 1 week ago today. Here at Saturday Sunday, we now turn the page to recapping each and every single team's NFL Draft. Tonight, we're going to start with the NFC East, go team by team, talking about the collective draft hauls of the Cowboys, the New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, and Washington Commanders. I'll share my favorite pick, my value picks, my questionable picks, and sum up the draft haul. I'll share my rankings for the NFC East draft. I'm not a big grades guy. Well, I'm a school teacher. I think NFL draft grades is kind of silly because there's so many factors that go into it. Where you were picking, did you use your assets to make trades? There's so much to be done, but I do like talking about each draft, saying what I like the most, whose draft I like the most, the value picks, the favorite picks, the questionable decisions that were made. So we will have 8 podcast episodes dedicated to recapping every single team for each podcast, doing it division by division. After that, we'll do an IDP rookie rank show. Maybe I'll try to bring a guest on to really share their insights on the IDP landscape for rookie drafts as well. We'll maybe try to set up a 2024 dynasty rookie mock draft and get some guests on here as well. And then continue to try to bring guests on from the industry as well. Like I said last time, we don't turn the page until like mid-July. And then we start turning the page to kind of looking at, the next year. And even those episodes really previewing the college football season doesn't even really come. Our summer scouting doesn't really come until August, but we'll turn the page sometime in mid-July. But there's a lot of stuff to break down from the NFL draft, a lot of talk, a lot of insight, a lot of great minds to pick their brains as well. So let's get right into this. These are going to be mini pods, not going to be long, but let's kind of break down, how we kind of saw this, everything happening in the NFC East. So let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. In round 1, pick 29 overall, they took Oklahoma offensive tackle Tyler Guyton. Round 2, 56 overall, they took Western Michigan edge Marshawn Kneeland. In round 3, pick 73 overall, they took Kansas State offensive guard Cooper Beebe. In the 3rd round, at pick 87, they also took Notre Dame linebacker Maris Liafo. In the 5th round, they took at 174, they took Wake Forest cornerback Kalen Carson. In the 6th round of 216, they took wide receiver out of Southeast Missouri State, Ryan Flournoy. In the 7th round, they had a pair of picks at 233 and 244. They took Louisiana Lafayette offensive tackle Nathan Thomas and Auburn defensive tackle Justin Rogers. In terms of my favorite pick, for me, it was clearly Cooper Beebe. I really liked him. I thought he was a guy that I understand the length. There's some questions. Does he got to kick in the center? All I know is this is a guy that if you went middle of round 2, in like the, let's say, pick 50 range, I would have thought it would have been a good pick. I would have been okay with the Giants taking him in the 2nd round as a guy who I could have thought been a plug and play starting offensive guard. Maybe he plays center, but I do think Dallas needs to rebuild up that offensive line a little bit. So Cooper Beebe was clearly my favorite pick. My value pick for them was Kalen Carson, the cornerback out of Wake. I thought he was a guy that was borderline top 100. So like when I was making my final, decisions for the draft projections notebook of what prospects were going to be in my top 100, he was a guy that was on my short list of 10 guys that maybe just missed. And he ended up going all the way to pick 174. I think this is the guy that could eventually develop into a top 3 cornerback on their depth chart and with a realistic chance down the line, maybe even to emerge into a starter. So I like Carson's game a lot. I was surprised he fell all the way to pick 174 when I thought he was going to go somewhere in that like 90 to 110 range, 90 to 120 range. He goes way later at 174. So I thought that was a really good value pick. My questionable move, a couple things. First off, the linebacker Maris Liafo out of Notre Dame, I really am in tune with what's out there from the major draft nicks. He was not in anybody's top 100. He wasn't even in most people's like top like 150s, round 4. Most people thought he was like a round 6 type player, round 5, round 6 type player. So for him to go in the 3rd round at pick 87, I thought that was really surprising. I thought there were some really good talented players left on the board there. I think the Cowboys, I did not think did a really good job this year in this draft. I think they took a developmental offensive tackle, in Tyler Guyton in round 1. I like the player, but he's not a plug and play type of guy. Western Michigan edge Marshawn Kneeland, I like the player. I think it was good value where they probably got him, but I also look at him as a guy. I don't think he's going to contribute a lot. Dallas is very much in a win now mode. We'll see about Dak Prescott long term, but I just thought I thought their picks were a little bit questionable. The value that they got for some of these picks, the immediate production. I'm not sure besides Cooper Beebe, and he's even an unknown as a round 3 guy. Is there anybody that immediately steps in and starts? Does Tyler Guyton immediately step in and start? Does Marshawn Nealon immediately step in and start? Ideally, you want to get 3 guys from a draft class that are starters. I'm not sure. I think Cooper Beebe might have the best chance on the interior O-line there, but I just don't see a path where they're going to get a lot of immediate production, and they didn't do much in free agency. I thought they had to do more to get guys that were ready to step in and immediately contribute for a team that wants to be a contender in the NFC East. If we take this to the New York Football Giants, in the first round of pick 6, they took LSU wide receiver Malik Nabers. In the second round, pick 47 overall, they took Minnesota safety Tyler Nubin. In the third round of pick 70, they took Kentucky cornerback Andrew Phillips. In the fourth round of pick 107, they took Penn State tight end Theo Johnson. In the fifth round of pick 166 overall, they took Purdue running back Tyrone Tracy. In the sixth round of pick 183, they took UCLA running back Darius Musso out of UCLA. I think it's also note when teams use premium draft assets, which means round 1, round 2, round 3, to make for player trades. I think it's important to note that the Giants had an additional second-round pick from their Leonard Williams deal, and they used that pick to get Brian Burns. So I think when you talk about the Giants utilizing their assets from the 2024 NFL draft, you at least have to acknowledge the fact that they did get Brian Burns by utilizing that second-round pick that they had at pick 39 overall. Obviously, great player. They had to pay him mega money, but they did use that draft asset to bring in Brian Burns. I think that's worthy and important to talk about and include when you're talking about a team's draft class. My favorite pick is Malik Nabers, and that's for twofold. One, I think he's basically a 1B to Marvin Harrison 1A. I think he's the most explosive wide receiver in the draft. And more importantly, I looked at this draft as a draft that I thought had 6 or 7, if you want to count Joe Alt, blue chip players. And the Giants came away with one. It was the 3 wide receivers. It was Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. And the Giants didn't get cute there. They took Malik Nabers over Rome Odunze, but more importantly, they didn't reach for JJ McCarthy. And if you've been a long-time listener of the show, you know that that's not something that I wanted the Giants to do. I thought it was a mistake for any team to do it, to pass on a blue-chip, high-end player like Malik Nabers, to me, who has the potential and the upside to potentially be the best wide receiver in all of football, potentially down the line. I don't think JJ McCarthy has a chance to ever even be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I think it's questionable whether or not he even has the upside to be a top 10 quarterback in the league. I'm not taking a guy who I think his ceiling is top 12, top 15 over a guy that could potentially be one of the top wide receivers in all of football. So that was my favorite pick, bar none. I thought the Giants had 2 really good day 3 value picks. I thought the drafting of Theo Johnson in round 4, if he would have went late round 2, where Brenton Strange or Luke Schoonmaker went last year, wouldn't have been surprised. Theo Johnson, to me, much higher ceiling and much more upside than either Luke Schoonmaker or Brenton Strange. So the fact that he falls all the way to round 4, I thought was fantastic. I think he's going to be a better college NFL player than college player. The elite athletic tester, one of the best athletes of all time at the tight end position. You add that into, he's got blocking chops and also the receiving capabilities. I really like that pick. And then one of my favorite picks, I've talked about him a lot, is Tyrone Tracy Jr. out of Purdue. I think he's got that Antonio Gibson to early career Alvin Kamara deployment and usage, former wide receiver converted to running back, explosive, can make you miss, burst, acceleration, speed, receiving capabilities as a former wide receiver, still new to the position, but to me, there's a lot to like. So those are my 2 value picks. Questionable pick. Listen, the fact that on the second day they targeted the secondary, they needed upgrades on the secondary. Tyler Nubin, plug and play starting safety. I think Andrew Phillips, probably a legitimate chance to be a plug and play nickelback. I do think you can question the ability not to take offensive linemen anywhere. They still have issues along the offensive line until we see them play good. I think there's still question marks there, and no additional interior defensive line help. They have Dexter Lawrence. They traded Leonard Williams last year. Obviously, their edge is set with Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and then off the bench, Azeez Ojulari. But I thought maybe a penetrating retech could have been an interesting pick somewhere on day 2, or the O-line, like a guy like Christian Haynes, maybe. Instead, they chose to try to solidify and fortify that secondary, which I can't knock them too much for, but I do think it's a little bit questionable that they chose that path rather than continuing to upgrade the O-line or the interior of the defensive line. If we take this to the Philadelphia Eagles, in round 1, pick 22 overall, they took Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell. In the second round, pick 40 overall, they took Iowa defensive back Cooper DeJean. In the third round, pick 94, they took Houston Christian edge Jalix Hunt. In the fourth round, at 127, they took Clemson running back Will Shipley. In the fifth round, at pick 127, Clemson running back Will Shipley. I think I said that twice. Fifth round, pick 152, Texas A&M wide receiver Aeneas Smith. Fifth round, pick 155 overall, Clemson linebacker Jeremiah Trier Jr. Fifth round, 172 overall, Michigan offensive guard Trevor Keegan. Sixth round, pick 185, Florida State wide receiver Johnny Wilson. Sixth round, pick 190, NC State center Dylan McMahon. They also moved around the board and picked up, I believe, an extra third and fourth and maybe even fifth round pick next year. At least 2 picks, maybe 3 for next year, adding to their 2025 draft capital. My favorite picks, I mean, listen, I can almost put the whole draft here. I put it as Aeneas Smith, Will Shipley, and Johnny Wilson. You don't even have their first 2 picks, which also can classify as my favorite picks, but they were such great values, and there were so many guys I wanted to talk about here that for me, I put my favorite picks as Aeneas Smith was one of my favorite wide receivers in this class. You know, I thought he's a guy that's a better route runner than people give him credit for, but he's an offensive weapon. He can do so much. He's got inside versatility, but he could also be used on manufactured touches. Great kick returner, explosive, great movement skills, change of direction. Will Shipley, he was my number 7th running back in this class. I know they just got Saquon Barkley, but I think Will Shipley could be an upgrade on Kenneth Gainwell and eventually really morph into having a role on that offense. Johnny Wilson in the 6th round, his movement skills for a man his size. I know he has some drop issues, but the ball skills, the body control, the catch radius, the length, and then you add the speed and the movement for a man that size. I thought he warranted going in the 4th round. So they got him all the way at the 6th round. So those picks I loved. My value picks, I mean, the Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and Jeremiah Trotter. I mean, I thought Quinyon Mitchell had a real chance to go pick 8 overall, and I think that would have been warranted. He falls to 22. They don't even got to trade up. Cooper DeJean, I thought was a top 20 player in this draft. He falls to pick 40. They make a small move up, and they go get Cooper DeJean. Jeremiah Trotter, I thought should go in the early portion of day 3, round 4. He falls to the middle of round 5. All those picks screaming value. I love the Jalix Hunt pick. He was one of my guys that I talked about in my guys episode. You know, I thought he went at the appropriate range, but I mean, everything they did, I think Trevor Keegan in the 5th round was a good pick. You know, I put for questionable pick none because they do everything. They moved around the board. They picked up future draft capital. They fortified their secondary. 2 guys who were highly regarded. They got explosive offensive weapons added to the mix, a developmental high-end pass rushing upside in Hunt. I don't know what more they could have done in terms of the overall completeness of it. Literally no questionable moves on my end. And then the Washington Commanders, pick 2 overall. They took LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels. Top of the 2nd at pick 36. They took Illinois defensive tackle Jerzon Newton. In the 2nd round, they also took at pick 50 Michigan cornerback Mike Sainstro. A couple picks later at pick 53, they took Kansas State tight end Ben Sinnott. In the 3rd round, they took TCU offensive guard Brandon Coleman at pick 67. And then toward the last pick of the 3rd round, pick 100, they took Rice wide receiver Luke McCaffrey. In the 5th round, at pick 139, they took Temple linebacker Jordan McGee. At pick 161, in the 5th round, they took Washington safety Dominique Hampton. In the 7th round, pick 222, they took Notre Dame edge Devontae Jean-Baptiste. Overall, my favorite picks, Mike Sainstro, Ben Sinnott. Ben Sinnott was my number 2 tight end. I think he could be a really high-level weapon as a tight end. He's got inside-outside versatility in terms of he can be detached. He can line up in line. He can hold up in terms of his blocking ability, but he's a guy who can run real routes. He can attack the seam. He can make plays after the catch. He can run good routes and create separation. A lot like Sinnott. In terms of Mike Sinistro, if he went late round 1 or early round 2, I would not have been surprised. I thought he was arguably the best nickel corner in this draft class. Tough, physical, like a lot about him. In terms of value picks, I thought Jerzon Newton was a top 25 player in this draft class in terms of his ability to penetrating, three-tech, defensive tackle. I love those kind of players. I thought Newton deserved going higher than this. So for him to go at pick 36, I thought it was great value. Questionable pick. I think it was a little early for Luke McCaffrey. Pick 100, there were some guys on the board. I think he profiles best as a 3rd wide receiver in the NFL. I just thought there were guys that had a little bit higher ceiling that I would have taken there. But obviously, you love the bloodlines, in terms of the McCaffrey pick. listen, I'm not going to put it on my questionable decision, but the choosing of Jaden Daniels over Drake May, it is a topic to at least be discussed. Like overall, I really like the Redskins draft as well, but they did choose Jaden Daniels over Drake May, and that with that comes some uncertainty, right? I do think Drake May's ceiling might be a little bit higher, but I do think the floor of Jaden Daniels with that running component makes him a little bit of a safer prospect. And he does have a high ceiling in his own right to be a Lamar Jackson or, a Randall Cunningham type player. But he does got to show a little bit more in terms of progression. You do got to be a little bit worried about the frame holding up in terms of his running and stuff like that. I think those are warranted questions, but I did overall like what the Washington Commanders did. To me, the NFC East really had a strong draft weekend. I really liked Burrito drafts a lot. I talked about the Cowboys being a little bit questionable at what they did. If I was just ranking for the NFC East, like I said, I don't love doing grades, but I do like to rank them. So you can think about this as, the highest grade to the lowest grade. For me, I would have the Philadelphia Eagles as my top ranked team in terms of the NFC East, in terms of their draft ranks. I'd have the New York Giants second, the Washington Commanders third, and then the Dallas Cowboys fourth. But I do really like what the Eagles, Giants, and Commanders did. I had some uncertainty and question marks about the Cowboys. I think they could have, taken a little bit of a different approach to get some guys more ready to perform right now. But the Eagles were one of the best drafts probably in the entire NFL. I thought the Giants were maybe in like the top 10, top 12, if we're talking about full rankings, because I did really like what they did, and they didn't reach for the quarterback position. And I did like what the Commanders did. A lot of, their first 4 picks, 5 picks even. I really love all 5 of those picks. I think all 5 of them guys could be starters as soon as this year. I like the Jordan McGee pick in the 5th round. I think he could be a guy that develops. And even the McCaffrey pick, while I have question marks on it, I do think he can eventually develop into a really good number 3 or number 4 wide receiver. So I think he'll be a productive player as well. So there it is, guys. My 2024 NFL Draft NFC East detailed recap. I'm going to be doing these for every single division. I will talk about every single team. So if you're a fan of a team, I will talk about it. I will share my insights overall as the class, what I think they did, what I liked, my favorite, my value picks, my questionable picks or decisions. I will do it for every single team in the NFL division by division. Again, get over to the website, S2S Football, fastest and easiest way to get there for $9.99. You can still get all of our premium content. There's still a lot of value to be had by getting the premium notebooks, the rankings notebook in its own right, all the detailed rankings in there. Constantly updating my dynasty rookie rankings. It has my overall just film eval rankings from before the draft, my tiers from before the draft. I'm going to incorporate IDP rookie rankings in the next couple weeks. I'm going to completely re-rank and set up my dynasty positional overall rankings as well. That will all be added to the rankings notebook. You can still see my scouting reports for all the guys in terms of the scouting notebook, and then the draft projections notebook. While the draft is come and gone, it's got my thoughts on 400 players in terms of how they win, in terms of some developmental areas. So a lot to still, you can look through that and still learn a lot about all these players, especially the IDP guys, which there's just not nearly as much coverage on those guys as well. So on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us, and we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.